Excited to be back for another episode of Limitless with a man who really needs no introduction, especially if you follow him on social media. He's authentic yet hilarious. He's engaging with great inside information of what it's like to be a developer, investor, and really just someone who has done extraordinarily well in the commercial real estate sector. It is it is no one other than the one and only Chris Hatch, who is the CEO of Forza Commercial. Chris, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for that shining intro.
There you go. More to come with that. We'll see if it's still warranted by the end of our conversation today.
The $5 and the Snickers have paid off so far, so that was a good investment on my behalf.
There you go. There you go. Well, Chris, let's jump right in. I think everybody's eager to hear your story. Where are you from, and how did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Salt Lake City, so I'm sixth gen here, and so I've been here the whole time we've been living here, and grew up here. My grandfather was a oil and gas landman, and then diversified into commercial real estate, strictly as a wealth diversification in the 60s and 70s. Started doing open book build-to-suits for companies like Texaco. And then he thought Arby's was the healthiest of the fast food operations. So he chose to do a handful of Arby's deals, which we still own a handful of those in the family portfolio today. And then my dad was a geologist as well, but then, got quit before he got laid off in the 80s. He was working for Amoco at the time, and got, the only company that would train him on how to do commercial real estate was Coldwell Banker. And so he went through the Coldwell Banker training program, became a landman, and started working and doing Walmart deals. Did the original Oregon expansion for Walmart into that state, and then a handful of other kind of Intermountain deals, and then started working for Albertsons and as a shopping center developer. And so I kind of grew up hearing about real estate around the dinner table.
Nice. And what was, in addition to obviously real estate being a big part of your family conversations at dinner, sibling dynamic? What about mom? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So we had three boys, two girls. I'm number two. And just pretty prototypical household for what the Utah environment is, right? Lots of big families here. My wife and I have 5 children of our own in our household. So, coming from a family of 5 kids, having 5 kids of my own feels kind of normal and natural here. And yeah, just, grew up here, spend most of my time here, attended the University of Utah. I did go on a mission for my church for 2 years. And when you really have done, great things in life, right in the past life, they send you to New Jersey on your Mormon mission, which was great. And I actually loved my time there. It was amazing.
Nice.
And everybody always likes to talk trash on Jersey, like it's not that great of a place. And I was down in South Jersey, and it was like beautiful and farm ground. And I was like, man, this is an amazing place, right?
It's interesting. Most people don't affiliate New Jersey with farm ground. And I definitely want to dig into your post-high school transition with both your mission and going to Utah. But before we get there, let's talk about you as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this infectious personality now. What were you like as a kid?
I was the kid that was constantly in the ER for hurting myself, for sure.
Okay.
I had like 200 stitches or something like that as a child.
At once or in total, or
No, just excessive, lots of things. I was always definitely getting in trouble. That's for sure. So I think I lived life similar, then that I do now. It's just aggressive and on the edge, and it was always up for any adventure, right? Buddy's got a dirt bike. Sure, I'll jump on it. I don't know how to ride that thing. Why not? Let's go, right?
What could possibly go wrong with a child using a motorized object that they don't know how to use?
That's it. Full send or no send. That's the way I live my life mostly today still. So it's not that abnormal, and I don't think I've evolved much.
There you go. Well, I'm sure you have, and we're excited to get to the nuances of that involvement. But so you were obviously out and about all the time. How were you as a student, and what did you do otherwise extracurricular?
Got through school. I mostly just had the standard, version of ADHD and had a hard time paying attention that many of us in certainly in the sales and commercial real estate world have. So, but I enjoyed school. I didn't mind it. I always liked math the most. And so that makes sense. I love pro formas today. Loved extracurriculars, played football, all through kind of junior high and high school, had a lot of fun with that. And then I had a really cool political science teacher hand me a defenseman lacrosse stick when I was a junior. And he said, now get a feel for that. And, those sticks are huge, right? I mean, it's 4 feet long or whatever.
Mhm.
He's like, okay, now you can hit somebody as hard as you can with that. And I was like, for real? And he's like, yeah. So just come out in the spring. And then I want you to hit people as hard as you can with that stick. And I'm like, great. Sounds good.
You didn't even know the name of the sport. It didn't matter based on the pitch that the teacher gave you.
He nailed it, man. He was right on it. He was a riot, and he would show up, and he was just this total surreal human. Like, it's like he's like a character out of a comic book, really. And he actually just passed away a couple of months ago, unfortunately. But he was just one of those really interesting people, and grew up on the East Coast, grew up in a whole different mindset of what the kind of traditional Utah family neighborhood suburbia is. And it was good. It was welcomed. It was a whole different thing. And I had a ride. It was a lot of fun. He and I negotiated that I was allowed to have one penalty per game. So I really liked the cross check. I'd really try to really time that one correctly. So got a little savage out there sometimes.
There you go. Good. So you played football and lacrosse. You mentioned having ADHD, which you were not the first guest. In fact, one of our more recent ones, Cassandra Harper, who I know
Mm-hmm.
certainly had the opportunity to navigate that, as I like to say. What were the results like in school? How were your grades? Obviously good enough for you to go to Utah.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, it's highly prestigious, university there, state university. It was great. I got through. I was always like a B plus to A minus student. I just never could buckle myself down to like just finishing everything all the way through. It was just almost like just getting through the assignment would just kill me off. So
Sure. Very common theme that we found through the show. A lot of former athletes, which you check that box, and then a lot of people who understood that school was important enough that it needed to be gotten through, but very little of the curriculum was exciting, and therefore they were focused on what ended up being for you as well, an entrepreneurial adventure. So you are, I think you're our first guest to take the route through the church of doing a mission before going to school. Talk to us a little bit about that. I know this is a podcast that's about real estate and private equity and franchising and all the things that come with that. But people's unique experiences help oftentimes shape the story of what success can look like for them. And I can tell based on your body language alone that was a pretty impactful experience for you.
yeah, so it's a 2-year experience that I went through, and so I left at age 19, and so I actually did 1 year of college, and then took a departure from college and left in July. Went out to New Jersey for 2 years, and it was fascinating. You learn so much, right? So you're assigned to kind of be with another person that you're with all day long, and you share an apartment, right? And so you're kind of with this person nonstop for 6 weeks at a time, and then sometimes you get reassigned, sometimes you have the same person for the next 6 weeks, and so you kind of really get to know that person quite well. At age 19. I think a lot of us can use a really good lesson is just how to live with someone else, right? And how to be respectful. And that might be anything from cleaning up your dishes to any other thing, right? That goes to just being around someone all the time. And so when you spend 2 years and, you're responsible for taking care of yourself, whether it's laundry, whether it's groceries, whether it's taking care of your health, to, making sure everything else is okay in your life. At age 19, that's really just not something that a lot of youth have the experience with, right? And someone might go off to college or whatever, but then you're coming home occasionally, and mom's got you restocked, for the next couple of months or whatever. But a totally different and unique experience, just from the living part of things. And then, I didn't have to learn another language. New Jersey, you'd have to learn like 900 languages if you wanted to speak the language everybody spoke. But thank goodness, pretty much everybody speaks English. So we we didn't have to learn another language. A lot of my friends, took off, and I had friends go to South America, had to learn
Wow.
Spanish, Italy. Another friend went to Russia, had to learn Russian, and so you go all over the place. And so I, kind of started immediately, whereas a lot of the letters that were coming to me from them were, hey, I've spent 3 months. I can't even understand what people are saying, even like the little kids. So
Yeah.
they're just bored, and a whole different set of challenges, right, that they were facing trying to figure out how to speak the language. So we just went right into it, and basically, you have a pretty regimented schedule. You're up at 6:30, you get yourself ready. 7:30 to 8:30, you're doing your own personal, study of scriptures and everything else. You're preparing your lessons for the day. 8:30, you're out the door. You do usually a couple hours of service in the morning, and then kind of wait till those afternoon hours where you have a little bit better hit ratio, and you are literally then knocking on doors and just trying to spread the word. And it can be snowing, it can be raining, or it could be 95 degrees and 90% humidity. And whatever it is, you're out there knocking doors in it, and it's quite an experience after you start compiling some time doing that, and the things that you learn from is pretty interesting.
I'm sure. I'm sure with that skill set, especially with something that you firmly believed in, I'm sure had a ton of translation in what you ultimately decided eventually with your career. I'm sure that was talked about over the dinner table in your household growing up, but you'll have to tell us that component of it.
Yeah, you end up with a lot of resilience, right? I mean, you end up going days and days without anybody being even, like, I'm talking even 1% receptive to your message. And that's heartbreaking, your first few days of it. But when you get to day number 275, right? And it's another day where you're chalking up basically, did we do any good in the world today? And you're like, here I am. I've dedicated my whole life to just like try to make somebody's life better in any possible way. It doesn't matter, right? Like, could be we just helped somebody out, and had somebody had a flat tire, we fixed the tire for them, or helped them, whatever it is. On day 275, when you have no action, it's a little bit discouraging. You got to figure out where your drive comes from. And so I think probably for me, there's a lot of lessons learned, but probably the biggest one is just drive.
Sure. So you fulfilled your 2-year mission obligation and then went back to school.
Back to school. Yep.
What does that experience look like and what did you study?
Well, it got a lot easier from the standpoint of I realized how much more I could do with my day, because again, you have this super regimented day, right? You're up at 6:30, you're out the door at 8:30. You take a 1 hour lunch break. We used to just do 1 hour for lunch and dinner, so half hour, and then you're in the door at 9:30, and by 10:30 it's lights out. And so when you kind of get set on a schedule like that, it was really nice coming back to college, because college felt really easy in comparison to what that was. So I immediately jumped right back in, and I knew in about 5 minutes that I wanted to be in the real estate world. So I sat down with my dad and grandpa and said, this is what I want to do. And I want to be a developer. And they said, that's great. Go be a broker, go be a banker and title, an attorney, go do something else for 20 years and learn this business. And then you can be a developer. And I was like, no. I just want to be a developer. And they're like, you need to go watch other people do it for 20 years. Then once you've done that for 20, then you can come back in and you'll be more suited to be a developer. And so I started work as a broker. That sounded the most interesting. We found a really good couple of mentors there. And so in 2002, I got licensed as a broker. And to this day, I still have broker licenses in a couple of states, and we own and operate a commercial real estate brokerage.
Nice. And what made you gravitate towards brokerage as opposed to leasing a house for a landlord even, or going and working for a retailer or a title company? What made brokerage the right choice for you?
Now, I run the risk here of offending a lot of people, but title sounded like a snooze fest. It did not appeal to me, and that's fine. It's good if it appeals to you and you're listening to this. That's great. I applaud you. You found your path in life. Attorney sounded like worse than title to me. I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot read all this paperwork. I'm going to die. Baker generally sounded kind of interesting, but not really. I felt like I was going to have to wear a suit every day. That's not me. We didn't really have a ton of retailers headquartered out of Salt Lake at the time. That would have been a great option. to go work for a retailer, other than just working retail, like behind a counter. But we didn't have a lot of, like real estate departments that are located here or anything. There's more now, but it was less then. And same thing for the in-house. We just didn't have as many of the institutional owners here yet. And so broker was really, we kind of were hunting for mentor, and we found two mentors for me to train under. And, it's interesting.
You mean your dad and grandfather?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They were super hands-on with me through the process.
That's awesome. Awesome.
And so I got placed with these two mentors, and I still do things every day that one of the two of them taught me.
And who are those mentors?
So one guy passed away a couple of years ago. His name was Robert. And then the other guy was Taylor DeBry. And funny enough, so Taylor spent all this time, those years mentoring me. And we've recently, about 18 months ago, we brought his two sons, Alex and Connor, into our office. And so I'm helping to mentor them right now as well, which is fun.
Full circle. That's got to be quite the experience. Do they ever either frustrate you or excite you based on things that you would have done in their shoes at that time that you were learning from your dad? And you're like, oh, I guess that makes sense now in hindsight.
Just the other day, I was literally looking at one of them and I'm like, I did this exact same thing. And this is exactly what your dad told me. And now I have to tell you the same thing. And I'm like, and I understand why you did it, but it's not the correct way. You need to do it this way. And so, yes, it is pretty entertaining watching it come full circle. It's been more rewarding than I would have thought it would have been. It's pretty entertaining.
I'm sure. Yeah. The joy can be in giving sometimes. Bathor, before you became this big brand in the industry, obviously you started out in brokerage. Give us an embarrassing story either from your first job or somewhat toward the beginning of the career that's worth sharing with us. I know the reason why I'm asking you this is because I know I'm sure you did something, because I know you well enough to know that you probably did. And B, I'm sure it's good and you're not afraid to share.
Top of my head, there's dozens of stories, but top of my head, when I was a kid, every time we'd drive anywhere and my dad would flip a U-turn and it was illegal, he'd always be like, oh, it's okay. I have a broker's license. You can do that. And so that was our family joke, right? Well, I'm on a tour and I've got this wonderful real estate rep with me, and we're riding around and we're trying to open a bunch of easy cash locations, right? So these check cashers. And this client, we actually ended up opening like 35 of them in a year. We cranked with this client, but she was telling me this story about how she had befriended a wild squirrel and it had become her pet squirrel. And I was obviously into the story because it's the first human I've ever met that has a pet squirrel. And I go to flip a Yui, and we're on like a pretty busy road, but I was in the chicken lane, like the center turn lane thing, right? And then flipped a Yui from there. I get pulled over. Well, I'm like 18 months into brokerage business, and I'm getting pulled over with this client in the car, and this cop just chose to just yell. He walks up to the window, and mind you, here we are. We're professionally dressed. It's not like there's anything crazy going on, right? And the guy he's starts at a 9.5 out of 10. And I'm like, sir, there's no weapons in the car. I don't have concealed carry. How are you? I apologize. I didn't see the no U-turn. Just loses it. Anyways, that was pretty entertaining. That was pretty embarrassing right there.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yep. We finished. Sure. I asked her, do you want to go get your rental car? Do you want to just go find another broker? What do you want to do? She's like, oh, whatever. Let's keep going.
This podcast is being recorded in early August. And I say this, I sort of sounded like Eeyore, but it would be unfair if I didn't point out that I got pulled over on a property tour with Kendall in our office last week. While in a different state, of course. So naturally, I had the opportunity to navigate those waters and learn those lessons. So anyway, enough. I derailed from all the people out there that are listening. I just want to hear about you. So you get into brokerage, other than potentially becoming a felon by making an illegal U-turn, you seem to be putting the pieces together nicely in the business. Probably have a competitive advantage, right? With dad and grandfather teaching you the ropes all the way and helping you get set up with the right mentorship, which I'm sure I know you well enough to know that you're grateful for that. Talk about the continued trajectory of your career. I know you started in 2002, I think you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens next after that first role or as a result of that first role in brokerage?
Yeah. So I pretty much right out of the gate gravitated towards tenants that were drive-through uses. And I started liking drive-through uses more than everything else that I was doing. And, no problem if a Dollar Tree or something like that wanted to come along and have us represent them. I still was interested and I'd take that business, but I just didn't like it as much as, doing a Starbucks or something else. And so when '08 and '09 hit, it was a tidal wave. It was a very different time, and people who lived through that time or other great depressions have seen how devastating that can be. And I thought this is a pretty good opportunity to pivot my business plan. And what I wanted to do is pivot and help people buy and sell single tenant net lease real estate. And so I kind of reset. And at the time, we had joined up with a different brokerage, and our sister company was a Newmark brokerage. And the guy that was selling, hundreds of millions of dollars per year of industrial buildings was bored stiff because nobody was buying anything. So I walked down the hall and I said, I'm going to teach you retail. You teach me how to sell. And let's go 50-50. We'll create a platform. And that turned out to be a wonderful partnership. We ran that for about 6 years. We sold just over 400 single tenant buildings all over the whole, U.S., all over the place. And it was really a lot of fun and had a lot of entertainment doing that. Right about there, I had started in 2010 buying assets in my generation of the family. And the first one I bought was actually an Arby's. And it was just, there wasn't very many years left on the lease. The two landlords were in their 80s. They were very worried Arby's was going to leave. I was excited because I thought Arby's might leave or renew the lease. And so their fears were my opportunity, I guess. And so we pursued that and decided with Dad and Grandpa, it was a good fit for me because I knew leasing. And so it really wasn't a bunch of development risk to take on there. And so I started acquiring about that building, and then I just kept going. And after a few years, I realized, there's really nobody to run these buildings other than me. And, they're a mess, right? I mean, I had some on my own, I had some with family, I had some with third-party investors. And so we created a management company called Forza Management. And that started in 2014. Today, Forza is sitting at about 5 million square feet of property, with about 220 customers.
Love that. So a couple questions before we keep going forward. In '08, when you made the transition to focus your business on investment sales, what did you do with your leasing business, your tenant rep business?
Yeah, I grabbed a couple of partners and transitioned that business to them. And what I found is that they had way more passion for it than I did. So they basically took that business plan, took their own, and then exploded it into something bigger than I thought it could have ever been anyways.
Okay. And Dad and Grandpa said you're not allowed to be a developer for 20 years. And you got into it after 8.
Well, we talked through, most of those initial acquisitions, I spent a lot of time talking through it with both of them. Okay. And what we decided is lease up was a whole different world than building ground up. And so
I am so glad that you said that.
Yeah. And even renovation there. So we were buying small shopping centers, right? So think like 12 and 16,000 square foot stuff next to a grocery store. And, anywhere where you'd see like the terracotta slope tile. And so there'd be like a 24-inch sign band, the terracotta tile, and then kind of a weird roof line thing up top. Well, we'd go rip all that stuff off and just put in a 6-7 foot facade and put the exact same sign back that was already on there. And now the sign looked 3 times bigger because it was a flat facade and it modernized the look. And so we started pursuing projects like that.
Love that. And so the way that you got familial sign off from Dad and Grandpa is that you had a good idea and it wasn't full blown development. Fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. And, that is a totally fair point. So started 2010, just kept going.
Timing was impeccable, by the way. Impeccable timing to start doing that.
Listen, anything after you got through '08 and '09, it is hard to really relay to anyone what that feeling was like in October of '08 when you just watched the Dow Jones Industrial Average just plummet to the earth. Like it was wild. And you're looking at it and you're like, am I going to need to like go work at like Kroger as a like produce stock person? Like I have no idea. Right. And I had, we had one kid, we were, let's see, in 2009, we got pregnant and had our second in 2010. And, it was really scary times. And so, yes, on the backside of those really scary times, great opportunities for sitting there.
Sure. The other thing too I find interesting is that you had this obsession with QSR drive-thrus in 2002. Pretty forward thinking.
I think I just got lucky. It's just what I liked, and it's what I like doing. And
on behalf of the listener base, we have a tough time believing that, but I'm glad that it has worked out, and we appreciate it. It was quite foresight there.
It's been fun. So from 2010 to 2020, we bought like 45 properties. And I, true to form, every time we did go ground up, we did it with a development partner, somebody who is every day, all they do is build things. So anything that we had that was ground up, I partnered. And then January 2020 rolled around, and that's when we formed our ground up development team. And we chose to run that under Forza Commercial, which is, Forza Development, which is our handle. And since then, we've bought another 50 properties. And so, it's been good. We opened in January. March of 2020, a small health epidemic hits the world and sends ripples through life, right?
Yep.
April 2020, like I'm on the phone. My partners that took our leasing business went on to create Legend Commercial, which is our brokerage company. And I'm on the phone with them. I'm like, I'm living in Las Vegas in an Airbnb because we were in a rental house here that flooded while we were rebuilding our home in Salt Lake. This is all going on during COVID. And
what made you guys go find a rental house in Vegas, out of curiosity?
I think my wife was really depressed that we were living in like this nasty rental house that had like a sewage problem. And she's just like, I would like the sun and a pool. And I was like, great, super. It's not warm here yet, so let's just keep driving south.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
And we booked an Airbnb on I-15 driving there. It was kind of wild. And then we lived there for a month.
Oh, cool.
Yes. Yeah. So, but I was on the phone with my partners and I'm like, is life going to exist anymore? Like where are we headed? Right. Like it just was so crazy that time period. And so we get through that and we're like trying to like run these various teams remotely. We're trying to figure that out. That was nuts. Just trying to figure out how to work remotely. And then we get through all that. We get a few projects in the hopper, got some Starbucks deals going, got a couple other tenants who we're doing build the suits for, Cafe Rio, local Tex-Mex group out of Utah. It's kind of regional here. And get a few projects running. And then all of a sudden we can't source anything for those projects in 21. And anything from TPO roofing has like a 1-year lead time to whatever.
HVAC was a disaster then. Oh yeah, I remember.
Such a mess. So we get those set of buildings built, and those were a bunch of Frankenstein buildings, right? I mean, there's weird parts on all of those buildings that got completed in 2021, right? I don't think there's anybody who built the building how they had planned it originally. Then we got into 2022, we kind of loaded the hopper bigger because we felt a little bit more comfortable, right? And then all of a sudden, Jerome Powell just pulls the rug out from under us. And, so we had, at least a half a dozen projects that there was no margin by the time we were done. And, as fun as it is to do everything for free, it's really not that fun to do it for free, right? And so got those cycled through. That took until mid 23, end of 23 to kind of get all those off the table. And had really good broker advisement through that time period. Guys like John Andrini who just, were in my ear and like, you got to clear the bad ones off and then keep going. Like you've got to keep going. And so I was really fortunate, I think, to have some really good advisement of people that were giving me good direction. We got through that and thought about reloading the hopper. We started reloading the hopper and then it was like supply chain crisis all over again. And I had 2 multi-tenant buildings that sat there fully completed, one for 6 months and the other one's for 8 months, just waiting for power. And it wasn't until, we finally figured out that most of the power, is either coming out of the North Carolina facility closer to you, or it's coming out of Juarez. And so we started working backwards and figured out we knew multiple people attached to the manager at the Eaton facility in Juarez. And so we actually off book, paid through basically WhatsApp for a transformer. And I'm sure we just notched somebody else out of the way, and we got ours through the system, and they drove it over to the US and dropped it off, and we picked it up on a trailer and ran it to one of our buildings and juiced it up. And but the stuff that we were going through every day was just like crisis, right? It was just like complete utter chaos. And I think we got through that. And I felt like I woke up at the end of 2024 and I was like, if I've survived to this moment, we're going to be fine, because I'm not really sure what else can come at you.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the 2008 recession, one of the questions that I commonly ask our guests is, what's the biggest curveball you've ever had? I'm almost considering shifting into, was it '08 or was it the pandemic? Unless if there's some other one that you want to throw in there, but these were serious for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, '08 was so fearful. And it was so fearful for so many people, right? And anytime there's catastrophic situations like that, people are considering self-harm, and there's all kinds of other really terrible things that end up happening. And so you saw a lot of that, whereas in COVID, it was just like a slow death spiral. Right. And, I look at a lot of these kids, and we're pretty active with my children, and we help coach and manage teams and, kid groups and youth groups and whatever. And you can see it in a lot of these kids. They have a lot of developmental problems that live through that time period.
Absolutely.
And, the absence of human contact was not a good thing for many of them. And so I don't know. I'm not sure which one was worse, but I definitely feel, and I tweet about this occasionally, like, that moment where Captain Ron's on top of the ship and he's yelling at God, like, what else can you come at, throw it at me, right?
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I got to the end of 2024.
Sure. And so here we are, not that much later, 2025.
Yeah.
Like, as I mentioned before, August recording. What's the state of the union like for you?
Yeah, it's, I just think I, like everybody else in the development space, would just appreciate a little bit of stability in the country. And I don't think that's any one party's fault by any means, but it's just, for whatever reason, it just seems like we're so fractured between blue and red in the country. And, whether partisans playing a role into whether or not we're dropping rates or not, it's just, the whole thing is just such a mess, right? And until we get back to that world of helping the average customer that buys a net lease building to feel comfortable to buy, we're going to have problems, right? Our cap rates are not going to compress. We're not going to have more inventory move off the market. We're not going to get back into a seller's market versus the buyer's market for a while. We need some stability in the country. We need to get back to doing business and just have everybody focus on that versus I hate you, you hate me, blah, 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 whatever. And all of that's really irrelevant, right? And, in the grand scheme of things of what we're trying to do here for getting these buildings built, I think I'm really happy that I'm not building gigantic apartment complexes, because I'd be a lot more stressed if I was.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that I'm still just building coffee stores and burger chains and, things that people need every day for their life, whether we're in a recession or in, robust times, either one.
Yeah, totally. How many deals? You said you're approaching 100 on the Forza side for the investments and development. How many have you done? I know you track it on social. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, we closed on 98 last week.
There you go. So you'll be at 100 in no time. What's the craziest one you've ever worked on?
Craziest, like just weirdest deal?
Just crazy. Just like, you and I are having a cocktail or whatever right now, and you're like, dude, you're not going to believe what happened on this deal or over here at this point.
I just walking through as many kitchens as I've walked through, I can't believe I can eat anywhere, like literally anywhere other than my own kitchen. I don't know what happens, but like 2 weeks after a kitchen, any kitchen, it could be a spotless, clean kitchen. 2 weeks after it's been operating, it is so awful in there. You just like don't even want to walk.
The smell is it's incomprehensible how it gets to that point. To your point, that quick.
Yes, we bought a village in Casper, Wyoming, and we were in at 1031. We bought it. It's a pretty good cap rate, but it was a great piece of real estate. And so we moved forward. We closed on it. And then the tenant went bankrupt within like 12 months of us buying it. We knew there was a high risk of that happening, and then it happened. And then it took us probably 60 days to get through the building. We had sent, a local person, kind of a building inspection person, to keep an eye on it, through it a couple of times. Well, by the time we got there, Village Inn just turned the keys off and just walked away. They turned off the walk-in cooler, everything else. They left it full of food.
Oh.
So, yeah, I mean, just little things like that, right? Another good one is, man, we were on a site tour, and as we often do, so to tour these mountain state, properties that we work on all the time, the most economical way is we rent a minivan in Salt Lake, and then all of us jump in the minivan. And I'm really good about like curating everybody's snack list. So I'll have each individual person's favorite snacks. I'll go.
Spoken like a father of five.
I work on this like tireless.
Father of five, no doubt.
Well, we usually go for like 4 to 8 days. And so by the time you get to day 6, everybody's a little grumpy with each other. I just find it's better if somebody likes tropical Skittles versus the red, the original, they should have the tropical Skittles, right? Yeah. So, all right. So we get in a minivan and we drive through Wyoming on I-80, and then you go up 25 up into Montana, and then you kind of weave your way through Montana, and then you go up into the panhandle of Idaho, and then come back around eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, Boise, and then down through. And that's usually our routes. And so if you are a junior person sitting in the vehicle, after day 4, you have been told, do not forget this. Call this person immediately when you get back to the office. This is the most pressing thing that you're working on. That statement has been uttered at least 500 times.
Yep.
And let me tell you, heaven help the person who doesn't make the call, and then we see somebody else do a deal. You will be ridden into the ground. Right? I'm talking into the ground. Yep. So one of our rookies is in the car, and we're going through Mountain Home, Idaho, and there's just kind of really rough, tired-looking Taco John's there. And I said, go get a burrito and then ask the guy what he's doing with this building. Well, he goes in, gets a burrito, asks the guy, and he's like, well, I really like this one, but I've got one in Nampa, which is kind of on the west side of Boise. And he said, I don't really like it, but it's a pretty good spot. Well, that was the first Dutch Bros we ever developed, was that location.
No way.
And it all came because our junior guy was willing to go in and go get a burrito.
And he survived the burrito, it sounds like.
He's here. We had another one. We were going through sites in Missoula, and the only site was this nasty Chinese food restaurant. And we had one guy in the car. He's like, I'll do it. I'll go in there and I'll go eat lunch. And we're like, you don't need to eat lunch. You can just go in there. It's like 3:00. And he's like, no, I'll eat lunch. So we hit Buffalo Wild Wings. He goes to the Chinese restaurant. Lo and behold, the owner's not even there. He will stand the food anyways. It did not work super well for him, is my recollection. That situation was not good. But anyways, there in stands, there's like an Aspen Dental and T-Mobile there now. So
wow. There you go. Yeah. Good eye for these things. It's almost like
not Aspen. Sorry. There's a sleep number in T-Mobile. That's right.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated by how far everything is in the mountain states and out west in general. Like you guys, yeah, just the logistics of multi-state tour. They're in a multi-cities in the same state is like, it blows my mind every time. I'm like, holy moly. It makes me grateful for the quick 2 and 3 hour drives on the East Coast that we got. So.
It is nice. We usually play Mario Kart the whole time on Nintendo DS's. And so while the driver.
I don't understand. You have TVs in the back of the van?
We usually just use the DS's, right? So it's got the little handheld portable thing, but you can sync with each other if you're within a certain distance or whatever. Yeah. So you play Mario Kart, you play Battle, and it's not uncommon after all day of driving around and talking to each other. We'll pull in, and we usually try to eat something that's generally local when we're in a new town. And so we'll pull in and like sit down, and like it'll be like a waitress or waiter will come over and take our order, and nobody will even look up because we're still just talking trash to each other playing Mario Kart.
You guys are iPad kids in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. I love that.
Yes,
I love that. So you've had an unbelievable perspective because the business was shown to you from birth until where you sit today. And I know you have family that's gotten into the business, and you're mentoring someone who probably feels like family to you, kids now. And so I'm really excited for those those of our listeners out there who in particular are just getting going into our business, are considering getting into it, or been doing it less than 5 years, what advice do you have for them?
It's so interesting how much more information is available if you're new to commercial real estate today than if you were even just 20 years ago. And I think exactly what this is, right? The Limitless podcast is a great example of that. Aaron's
Do you know any other good podcasts that are worth listening to that our listeners should maybe check out?
I like Chris Power's podcast a lot.
I'm talking about there's like a sign behind you, and the one that.
Oh yeah, there you go. Ours is great too. Dirt Dog Pod.
Good opportunity to give a plug for your podcast, which I know is excellent. So it's worth sharing. Chris has a podcast.
I just interview retailers on the Dirt Dog Pod, and we have a lot of fun with it. And it's just stories from the road and tell us about getting things open. Chris Reza has a wonderful one. I like his a lot. Retail Retold. There are so many resources just in terms of podcasting, and it's not like any of these podcast hosts are doing this. It's not like Aaron or I are getting some big paycheck or something. I literally started mine to give back. My whole intention is to speak to the people that are 5 years or less in the business and have them hear from the retailer's mouth what it's like and how do you pick this corner versus that corner, because it's hard. And that's the whole intent. And so I love all that information that's available. I love Twitter, LinkedIn. There's lots of resources. So my first response to your question is soak up all the information that's out there, because there is a plethora of information. And then the other thing is get busy doing what you want to do. And I understand, I've started with the intention of being a developer. Well, I was in the trenches broker for 20 years before I did that. And because I did that, because I've ridden around with a Wendy's franchisee through every single store in the Las Vegas market, because I've gone through with a Wendy's franchisee in Boise and gone through every Wendy's and every Burger King and every McDonald's and every Taco Bell and every Jack in the Box, and gone through a 3-page ranking system, 5 questions of which are, what was the condition of the restroom on every single fast food building in Boise. I can speak more intelligently than lots of my peers. I can speak more intelligently than a lot of people that have been doing commercial real estate in Boise their whole lives, because they've never had that experience to go walk through every fast food restaurant and rank everything, including 5 questions about the bathroom. So get busy doing what you want to do and just get the experience, because it takes a while. It takes 15, 20 years to figure out what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I'm doing the podcast, not only to get back from my vantage point, but to also learn from people like yourself who are further advanced in their careers and been able to just grab one lesson here or there. So if you're just getting started or been considering getting started, know that being, 11, 12 years in, whatever it is now, to be able to have the opportunity and access to the Rolodex of people like Chris has been quite the amazing experience for me. And I'm certain that there's plenty of things to take away for you. Speaking of developing that skill set, the knowledge base, talk to us about maybe a book or something else that we haven't talked about yet that's been an amazing resource to help you with your mindset, whether it be commercial real estate direct or really just about being an entrepreneur or developing as a human. What comes to mind from that vantage point?
I've read a book a number of times that somebody recommended to me years ago, and it's called How I Turned $1,000 into $1 Million Investing in Real Estate in My Spare Time. It's by William Nickerson, and it's out of print. I know they've kind of reprinted it a couple times recently, but it's really interesting because he basically talks about how he is socking savings away. He has a day job. He's putting savings to the side. And then once he's saved enough money, he puts that money into a piece of commercial real estate, a cash flowing piece of real estate. He starts with like a rental house. And then he talks about all the costs that go into improving it, the lease up, income he's making. And he basically just continues to just accrue everything. So all of the rental income and everything goes over here into this investment bucket. And then he eventually sells the property because he's raised the value. And then he rolls that property into the next. and does it again and rolls it into the next and does it again and rolls it into the next and does it again. And, I know there's a wide variety of opinions on 1031s, especially in real estate Twitter, and some really hate them and some love them.
Yep.
I have many companies where we're on our 7th exchange. So what originally started with, here has kind of gone forward with 7 new properties. And
Realigned here, by the way. Whenever we're selling a deal here and we talk about the opportunity to exchange, I mean, the wealthy exchange, the exchange is till they die.
Yeah.
Period. I'm not saying that you have to force yourself into an exchange. I don't believe in buying a deal to buy a deal, but why, if you're doing what we do and you're doing it reasonably well, and you always have a pipeline. If you have a pipeline and you're selling properties, why would you write a check with post-tax dollars when you have that same cash sitting there available that you're maybe not allowed to touch for yourself, but you can use it in your next investment? Like, I don't really comprehend the argument not to do it. So yeah, we're in complete alignment there. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. I think one of the downers of retail is that it's not as good of a tax deferral system as apartments or industrial or hotels might be. Storage, same thing, right? A lot of those other food groups, they can depreciate things much faster, much quicker. And I think some people are figuring it out, like I'm sure you are on the small side, right, where you do these prefab units, and there's some ways for you to get to some faster depreciation schedule. Yeah. But for the most part, retail is kind of a lousy tax shelter. Really, it's great for cash flow, but it's pretty rough on taxes. So anything you do to defer those taxes, why not?
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. All right. You get the same question as everybody else to wrap this thing up here. You have already, you decided to call it quits today. You've already built up an incredible track record and a reputation in our industry. You're still high energy. You're still getting after it, having fun and mentoring. At some point, you're going to step away. What do you want the trade publications to say about you when you do?
It's an interesting assumption to assume I'll step away. My grandfather at age 100 was buying oil and gas minerals, and then he bought an Arby's and we financed it. So I'm not quite sure that that I can concur with your opinion that I'll step away, because I don't think I ever will. I'll probably die at the desk.
Sure, but that's maybe forcefully step, maybe removed. This is better terminology.
Look, I think I'll certainly be choosing hours I'd like to be at that desk, but for sure, right? Like I am now anyways, but I don't know. I think, to me, if I can help, train a lot of new people into the commercial real estate space, that would be wonderful. Our director of development at Forza right now is a gentleman that was born in New Zealand, but he's of Samoan heritage. He's the only Polynesian, Pacific Islander developer that we know on Earth. We've never met a single other one ever. He's the first Polynesian to graduate from the University of Utah's Masters in Real Estate Development program. And he's a wonderful guy. He lives here in Utah he and his wife raising 2 kids. But meanwhile, he grew up in Compton, and he just has a completely different life structure than what you and I've had, Aaron, and what most people have in our industry. And helping him get a foothold in commercial real estate is probably one of the most thrilling things I'm doing.
Love that.
So I look at that and I say, how else can I help other people like that, right? I mean, to me, it's what can I do to help?
Love that. I have no doubt that that'll be the narrative, because you're genuine in that. It's genuine where it's coming from, and I know everybody who's been a direct recipient is obviously incredibly thankful for that. And hopefully there's some people whose name you don't even know, because they're out there listening, or appreciative of the wisdom you've provided today. So thank you, Chris, for joining us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the pod.